Hello, hello, everybody. Hello, lovely people of LinkedIn. And since last week, also lovely people of YouTube, because we're going live both on YouTube and LinkedIn. Um, Monday, I know it's Labor Day for a lot of you guys, and it's Labor Day for Chris, but he took the time out of his busy schedule and joined us for this lovely coffee conversation, even though I'm again without a coffee, but fuck it. So, Chris, without me rambling too much, like I know how to do sometimes, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you. And can you introduce yourself briefly to the audience, and then we'll jump in?
Sure. I'm Chris Tuff, and Miha, thanks so much for having me on. It's a privilege to be here. I got my start in the early days of the internet in about 2003, and I tell everyone the best thing that ever happened to me was having graduated from a pretty prestigious university in the U.S. I ended up going to 64 job interviews before I got to the lucky 65th, and it was the 65th that I ended up kind of falling into this digital and social media world as it was kind of coming back from the dot-com bust. And I famously had one of the first viral video sensations with me getting engaged to my wife. I hit a camcorder in a tree, pretended to sprain my ankle, went from spraining my ankle to popping the question. It was a 3-minute scale of emotion that the internet had never really seen before. It got 7 million views. Good Morning America interviewed us. Got us on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. And I always use as an example that when you start landing in your zone of passion and kind of when passion, purpose, and profession all overlap, ridiculous things tend to happen to you. And that was kind of the first foray into it. And then, worked directly with Facebook on some of their first advertising products, and that kind of became my Miha, like what I like to call it, my first currency. Why people reached out to me, what I was getting paid for. It was really around this digital and social media domain. And it was 3 years ago that I started the journey of writing my first book, which is all about how to better engage and motivate millennials. And my favorite quote from that is, millennials aren't the problem, they just expose all the problems. We published about 1.5 years ago. We've sold about 100,000 books, and I've had some amazing speeches with prestigious companies like Nike and others. And now I'm working on the next book, which I know we'll talk about, which is, instead of being inwardly focused like the Millennial Whisperer, which is more culture and leadership based, this one is outwardly focused on how to better network and sell. And the title of that is called Save Your Asks, ASKS. And I think we're going to talk about a little bit of both of those things today.
Yes, absolutely. We did dive a bit more into the first book on the podcast, which will be out any day now.
Yeah.
So we did a bit more on that there, and I guess we will do a bit more today on the second book, the outward thing. And I love the story of, is it Shawshank?
Shawshanking. Do you want me to tell that one quickly?
No, we'll get to that.
Okay.
So let's start with the Millennial Whisperer.
Sure.
Because a lot of our audience, especially on LinkedIn, is fellow entrepreneurs who are already quite seasoned, a lot of executives, some HR people from corporations. So, they're all dealing in a way with having millennials in one way or another joining their companies and so on. So, briefly talking about that, I'm sure is very valuable to our audience on LinkedIn.
Sure. So, the two main points that I like to reiterate to any leader or corporation, big or small, is that, the world has changed and the world is continuing to change. And it's best probably reflected in our relationships with our parents. And if you look at a lot of the older millennials, even going down to younger millennials into Gen Zers, they have a very different relationship than a lot of the Gen Xers and boomers had with their parents. parents. It's less authoritarian and more almost it can sometimes be described as a friendship. And I think for so long, us Gen Xers and boomers have been said, you can never be friends with your employees, blah, 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 blah. But actually, in reality, what your employees are looking for, younger employees, 38 down to the 24-year-old Gen Zers that are coming down the pipeline, and they're looking for connection. And they're looking for context. And connection is one of the most important pieces where I tell, on a controversial side, follow your people on social media. Follow everyone that's on your team. So when you come in on a Monday, you can go by Meg's desk if you saw that she just adopted an adorable dog from Miha, and you'd be like, where did you adopt that dog? It's so cute. Tell me more about it, right? You take a vested interest in their life. And that vested interest, they are looking for you as the leader to be inspirational, to be giving them autonomy, and they want you practicing transparency. But more than anything, and this is an aspect of that inspirational leadership piece, but they want you to be taking a vested interest in their lives, and they want you to be playing role as not only the boss, but also as their mentor and coach. And so really the book is more about what are some of those things that we can all do, whether we're an introvert or an extrovert, whether some of these things come naturally or not so naturally to us, to better kind of manage, and attract, retain, and really, I think when it comes down to it, it's like, yeah, I think we all want these things.
Yes, in a way. Before I found your book, one book that I was always recommending whenever I did leadership coaching with leaders in organizations was for them to read The 5 Languages of Love.
Oh, so good. And good for a marriage, too.
Yeah. I mean, you kill 2 flies with one spatula.
Yeah.
But yeah, understanding what are those languages of love, how they feel appreciated, how they feel valued, how they feel included, and so on. It's really important, and understanding the differences between them so that we can behave. But yeah, leadership has changed tremendously. I mean, it used to be so easy. You were just this nagging boss, and you were like my way or highway. But now, like, so much of that soft stuff goes into that. How are people, how are people adopting? How are leaders, older leaders, adopting to this new change that's happening, this big shift?
So, yeah, well, the 2 things that I like to emphasize is, one is the inspirational leadership. And unfortunately, inspirational leadership, if you ask a lot of people on that leader's team, hey, is Bob inspirational? Even though Bob thinks he's really inspirational, they're like, well, is Bob going to find out if I tell you the truth? And it's like, no, Bob's not going to find out. And it's like, no, he's not inspirational. Like, he's absolutely not inspirational. And there's a lot of things that make that up. But, one of the biggest pieces is really, it does revolve around that relationship and that connection that they feel to you as a leader. The second piece, and there are aspects. One thing I emphasize a lot, just like you're talking about the love languages with gift giving, I would replace that with rewards and recognition. And that is, you need a peer-to-peer rewards and recognition program. You also need a top-down rewards and recognition program. And sometimes it doesn't. You can just do it on the fly and say, I use an example of how I do all my all hands meetings, where I'll start my meetings off with the team, and I'll say, all right, I just want to give snaps to Meg. She went above and beyond for that presentation to X client, and she really pushed herself out of her comfort zone. And then I give snaps, and everyone gives snaps. And then what happens is they then take that over, and someone else on the team will give a recognition of snaps to someone else. And that goes on for like 25 minutes. And it creates this environment of building each other up, as well as, acting as that kind of peer-to-peer recognition. And then there's the top down, which is, I ask people, what's your big blue rooster? One of the examples I use in the book, which actually, funny story. It's actually one of the reasons why I'm now writing this next book, Save Your Asks. But it was a company called Domo, which is now publicly traded out of San Francisco, tech company. On your first day, I use them as the example of you will actually put your name and then what you want your at-bat song to be. So what do you want to play over the loudspeakers if you're going up to make a speech or whatever it is? And so, on the first day of every month, they will take the salesperson of the month's at-bat song. They blare it over the loudspeakers, big, these sirens at the top of the warehouse, all over this open warehouse, start going off, blue sirens, and then they take a 10-foot big blue rooster on wheels to sit next to the salesperson of the month's desk for the whole month. And, a lot of entrepreneurs and small business owners are like, how do I deal with giving away equity and stock options and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, listen, just figure out what your big blue rooster is, and you won't have to be as reliant on those cash rewards. They just want to be publicly recognized in a big way. So what is your big blue rooster? And it was funny, as I was kind of going through this, since publishing the last book and coronavirus hit, I've really been looking into the outward piece, like how can we actually increase ROI immediately with creating better salespeople and networkers within all of our organizations. And there was someone at Domo that had sent me literally 5 emails saying, hey, I'm blah, 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 blah from Domo. I'd love to pitch you on our services, blah, blah, blah. And it was the 5th email, and I didn't answer the first 4 because I get hundreds of those every day. And it was the 5th one that they're trying to strike some sort of, I call it a race to the middle, finding a common passion point. And they asked the question of, have you read any good books recently? And I was like, I gotta respond back to this guy. And I responded back, and I was like, I'm not being a jerk, but if you've done a little bit of research on who it is that I am, I published a national best-selling book called The Millennial Whisperer. And in that book, I use your company, Domo, as the best example of top-down recognition. And so here's my piece of advice for you. Go in with your first email, do a little bit of research, and strike a chord with that person on the other side on something that will actually, I'll be interested in, or just talk about something that I've posted that you're interested in. And the guy was like, thank you so much for the feedback. I'll definitely start doing that in the future. But it was a good kind of tie together of, all right, this is why I'm writing this next book, and also reflecting back on some of the examples in The Millennial Whisperer.
No, I love it. I love it. I call that the relationship sales, relationship marketing. I think we are slowly entering that. Not everybody. Some people are still new to the whole online world and still fall for the shiny objects and so on. But I think more and more of us are getting more and more educated. We've been exposed, like let's say on LinkedIn, let's be honest, like every day, like 3 years ago, you might get one message request a month or every 2 weeks. That was spammy. Now you get 10, 20 a day. And of course, 3 years ago, you could do that and get response, and now that BS doesn't fly anymore.
Exactly.
So we are evolving into more relationship, and I think we all want. We don't expect too much, but like just show me that you've spent 10 seconds on checking who you're sending this message.
But it's the same thing, Miha, with it's all about connection, right? It's all about connection inwardly and outwardly. And I mean that by just do a little bit of research on your people. What do they get excited about? Even with your anniversary presents, I use an example of a wife of a friend of mine. And for the last 5 years on her 1-year anniversary, she gets an old bottle of scotch. That's probably like a $200 bottle of scotch. And if the leaders had done any research on what she drinks, she hates scotch. And so when it comes time for her anniversary every year, she's like, well, even if they'd done a little bit of research or known that at that cocktail hour or that cocktail Zoom in today's day and age, that I had a vodka soda and they gave me a $20 bottle of vodka, it shows that they're taking a genuine interest in me. And it really does come down to connection. And so much of what we do with our people, but also with where we're trying to sell with our people, it comes down to that we don't care. It doesn't matter what your product is, right? It doesn't matter. I mean, for the most part, it doesn't matter how differentiated your product offering is. First, start with a genuine connection and then grow it from that foundation. And that the title of the next book is Save Your Asks. And that's a call to action. So instead of going in and saying, hey, can I have 5 minutes of your time? Don't go in with the ask so early, and save that ask and focus in on developing a longer term relationship and connection with the person. And you will find that the ROI is so much bigger.
Yes, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Before we jump into the next book, just one question. When you are working with organizations, when you are working with leaders, or they come to you for a consultation or want to talk with you, I know that a lot of them are, especially older leaders, are so focused on productivity, on using the time and being ROI focused. And, they kind of, what I see is when you talk about this building relationships with employees and being connected to them on social media and so on, like they almost feel like they don't have the time to do that. Now, how do you make them see the ROI if they become a better leader, the way you explain it?
So, well, first is look at the statistics. And if you see that you have a high turnover rate, here's the bottom line. For the first time ever, you've got two generations in the workforce that if you don't meet them on their own terms, if you don't develop a genuine connection, if you don't take a vested interest in their lives, they will walk. It doesn't matter what the economy is doing. It doesn't matter. They will move in with mom and dad and quit their job working for you if you aren't willing to do it. And I think we need to take a long, hard look at our statistics. How long are people staying at your organization? How much of a turnover are you having? And by implementing some of these techniques and strategies, as well as a few, I developed a 360 online leadership assessment around a lot of these connection points, 8 different pieces of what it takes to be a better connected leader. And I think you'll find that by taking action on those things, all of those statistics of what it is our immediate ROI if you can get people to stay from 1 year to 3 years, right? Because it's very expensive to backfill people that are leaving your organization. But from a almost qualitative standpoint, people are happier, they're smiling more, they're going more above and beyond when they can work for some of these things and for leaders that they believe in. And the other thing that I also emphasize is we've got to look at leadership. We all have strengths and weaknesses, right? And I'm a great, I've got a high emotional intelligence. I'm great at motivating. I'm super extroverted, but I suck at the operations side. And so the first thing I do whenever I kind of come into a team is I bring in an operations type leader. And oftentimes we complement each other in a lot of these kind of, strengths and weaknesses. And, instead of looking at one person being all things to all people, we need to instead look at kind of pairing up people. So you might be an introverted leader and this stuff sounds exhausting. You don't have time for that. Then go ahead and delegate that to another person that can help you lead the team.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I am just like you. Yes, yeah. I hate the operate. I mean, I do it when I have to, but I suck at it, and I don't like to do it. Okay, Chris. So great answer there, and I really, really strongly agree. Before we move to the second book, where can people find more about this book? I mean, of course, Amazon and so, but do you have like a website or anything like that? You mentioned the 360 questionnaire.
Yep.
So where can people find this part?
If you go to quiz.themillennialwhisperer.com, so quiz.themillennialwhisperer, and that's 2 L's, 2 N's, millennialwhisperer.com, I have actually a quick survey that you can take and figure out what type of millennial leader you are. And then I'll spit out what your strengths and weaknesses are. And I also, for people in the US, have an offer for a free book. You just have to pay for the shipping. And then also on the same website, themillennialwhisperer.com, I've got some other resources. Another one being a survey that you can take, a more comprehensive survey, online leadership assessment to see kind of where you rank on some of these items, as well as giving you the option to ask your team for feedback in those. So it's all on that website. And the best way to connect with me, if you're in some foreign country and you need me to send you the PDF because it's not available there, I'll be happy to do that. But the best way to connect with me is on Instagram, or I guess LinkedIn. And my Instagram is at Tuff, TUFF22. And then obviously LinkedIn will be on this post now.
Yes. Is your book also available for Kindle or Apple Books, so they can go there, buy it there as well?
And the audio version of me, Millennial Whispering, my Millennial Whisperer, is available too in all the audiobooks. Okay,
perfect. Now let's go to the second book.
Yeah.
I'm so looking forward to hearing all the stories, how it started. What it is about, the different techniques that you've learned through the time that made you go and write this one.
Sure. So, Miha, I think right as coronavirus hit, I noticed that a lot of the stuff that I was working on at a lot of these organizations came to an abrupt halt. And one thing I recognized was that the most immediate concern, or I say you've got to be a painkiller and not a vitamin for organizations, no matter what it is that you're trying to solve for. And I noticed that the pain points quickly shifted, and it was almost survival, right? And you need a more immediate ROI. Culture, leadership, that stuff is a little delayed in terms of the gratification as well as the ROI. Some people need to make massive sales in the next month to stay alive. And the other thing I noticed is that a lot of my work to date has really only been impacting white collared, or my friend mentioned to me, Emmett Shane is his name, Shane Emmett, and he said the Zoom class. And that's kind of, the people that have been not as affected by coronavirus because they're part of the Zoom class. And so I wanted something that I could put into the marketplace that people can take action on immediately, a book that they can really start changing the way that not only they sell and network, but also live a more fulfilled life. And I looked back on some of the things that I've worked on, and people they say, go to Chris Tuff for free stuff. Because I know everyone, whether it's like a car or the people, Big Green Egg or Zuckerberg, like I just kind of have this massively intertwined. I'm a super connector. And someone at Vanderbilt a few years ago said, hey, Chris, will you come in and just do a speech about how to better network and sell for these students? I was like, sure. And so I titled it How to Network Like a Mofo. And it was one of the most successful lectures that professor had ever seen at Vanderbilt. And so a lot of these elements are things that have come very naturally to me through years, but also through conversations. Some of the what I'm trying to provoke or evoke in people is how do we develop longer term, more genuine relationships while also scratching our itches to evolve our own currencies. And what I mean by that is I'm a good example of it, right? So my currency used to be what I was getting paid for was my currency of I was the digital and social person. That's why people went to me. And I evolved and my purpose evolved, my passions evolved. And then I ended up writing a book, The Millennial Whisperer, that was right in that domain of how do we kind of live a more connected life and inspire, basically to inspire and connect is my whole purpose. And my currency evolved, and that was my side hustle. And then it kind of became my full-time hustle as I was using that to open up the doors for the agency where I'm a partner, advertising agency, 22 Squared. And one of those, so the hypothesis that I'm trying to also activate with everyone is that we all need side hustles and passion projects to constantly be all evolving our own currencies. And some of those things they should just be a nonprofit for us, or they should just be a hobby. But you might find, and a lot of the examples in the book, a lot of these things can actually become your full-time profession. And even with the Millennial Whisperer, I would stand in front of audiences and say, life needs to be a ruthless pursuit of passions. And we just need a little bit more tenacity. And I think also it's really the tenacity piece and the resilience piece that we need to bake in. And I look at my 10 and 8-year-old daughters, those are the two characteristics I'm trying to teach them the most, because I think that's what it takes to live a more fulfilled life, as well as to be able to pursue some of these passions. And so, I've got the outline in place. I'm interviewing amazing people, and trying to bring to life some of these concepts. One that you alluded to earlier called Shawshanking.
Yes. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. Okay. So people will go to me for advice, and they're like, Chris, like, how do you network the way you do? And how did you land X client? And it was introduced to me by a friend of mine, Jason Beckerman. And Jason and I met in the early days of Facebook. And there were about 30 of us that were on this closed Facebook group right as Facebook was coming about. And that was probably in 2009. And it was 7 years later that I was sitting at a steak dinner with Jason, and I turned to him and I said, Jason, as a salesperson myself, as a networker, how in the hell have you stayed after me for 7 years? And here we are, we're about to sign probably one of the bigger deals of your your year. So how did you do it? He goes, Chris, I Shawshanked your ass. And I was like, what is that? And he goes, have you ever seen Shawshank Redemption? I was like, yeah, years ago. He goes, well, every single week for the last 7 years, every single week, I've had some form of a touch point with you. And that's been on Instagram message. That's been on Facebook message. It's been IM. It's been on text message and email. And not once in any of those did I go in for an ask. But instead, I was just kind of checking in on you and seeing how you were doing or how your daughter was, blah, blah, blah. And it was through that Shawshanking that kind of brought us to today. And I said, I lit up and I was like, oh my. So, and I was like, well, so what's it, how's it relate back to the movie Shawshank Redemption? And he was like, chip, 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 chip away. And essentially then you end up breaking through. And so I said, I'm going to bring that to life because I have just started courting a new client and I'm going to go Shawshank them. And it was 18 months later that we landed a massive client because of that relationship that was all based on that Shawshanking. And one of the elements that is so important is the relationship itself should evolve and grow with time, but it should be all based on real connection. And so that essentially is this concept of Shawshanking, because we all want quick fixes. We all want instantaneous, instant gratification, etc. But the harsh reality is some of these things take time. And so a lot of the tactics and stories in the book are about how do we take a longer term view, and even how do we get our 1% breakthrough when you're sending out email after email after email or cold call after cold call? How do you turn that 1% into 90%?
Yeah, that's a great question just there. I mean, my thought is that why people do all this Autobot quantity versus quality things that they do is that they are not clear who they want to connect with. They're not super clear on who's their ideal target, whether that's your ideal client avatar, whether that's your ideal employee, ideal investor, ideal business partner. It's, it's always good to have that clarity. And then the second question, where do I find them? And because
Yep.
they don't have those two things figured out, they just go and, shoot all over the place on all social medias. And then, of course, if you're doing that and you're reaching to hundreds of people on a daily basis, you can't do that where you go on your profile and you say, hey, Chris, how's your daughter, or how's your dog, or how's your, I don't know, new house, or whatever
Yeah.
is happening in your life. So having that clarity beforehand simplifies, because then you are not rushing to connect with thousands of people, but you just connect with a few, and then you can go at a slower pace.
I mean, and you bring up such a good point. In researching this, I talked to a guy named Aaron Abrams who specializes in breaking through to billionaires. And Aaron, I had dinner with Aaron. He works with my older brother and was introduced to me as a guy that was watching the Super Bowl. And he said that by the end of this, he noticed that during the Super Bowl, he didn't have relationships with Kraft or the other owner. And by the end of it, he had meetings set up with both of them. And I was like, I got to meet this guy. Like, this sounds ridiculous, because he sounds like an amazing networker and seller. And that was, Miha, that is exactly the point that he brought up to me, was that, one, you've got to, somewhere in a conversation with someone, identify who it is that you want to be meeting with. And, two, you've got to orient your ask around that person. And so often we forget that our greatest advocates are our customers already. And one thing, I've kind of taken it to the next level, and I do this with all my interviews on the book, around the book, is you manifest it around your dream. And when you do that, Miha, I know your dream, right? Your dream is to save as many dogs as possible, right? And by sharing that with me, you are creating a genuine connection with me, because you're showing that you're a little bit vulnerable. And I know what it is that you're trying to achieve. And 9 out of 10 people like myself want to do anything possible. It's why I am here right now, right? I want to do anything possible to help you achieve that dream. So I end every single one of these ridiculous interviews that I've been doing, ridiculous being that, like, I'm talking to just some very well-known, famous people. And I say, listen, it is my dream to impact more blue-collared and young people's lives, to help them live a more fulfilled life around a job that they're passionate about. Who in your network do I need to talk to? And it's amazing seeing, they light up. Because not only do they, because when you manifest it around their dream, they'll light up, they'll get excited and be like, oh, you know who I need to put you in touch with is this person, this person, this person, right? And it's such a different way to orient and ask, but also to continue to grow your network. And so, the same also is true, Miha. I was testing some of this material with a handful of executives on a mastermind call that I was a guest in of Tommy Breedlove. And one of the guys on the call said, so Chris, you talk about this concept of race to the middle, and the concept around race to the middle is where you find a common passion point with the other person, and you use it as a foundation to then build off of. So Miha, for example, I've got a dog, you're rescuing dogs, I'm helping rescue this dog, I've invested a lot of money in it, blah, blah, blah. Maybe we start it there. And he was like, so I'm good at all that. But when you're sitting at that round table at that nonprofit event, and you're, at the auction or whatever it is, and you kind of run out of conversation, how do you take it to the next level after you found those common passion points, or that race to the middle? And I said, it comes down to one question. And it is asking that other person, what is your dream? And when that person chooses to answer it, there's a bond being forged there. But then the next thing is also true when you help them achieve it. Sorry, Miha. Yeah.
No, I just wanted to jump in here and ask you, when you ask the other person about the dream, but you first have to tell yours. Am I right? You have to open up. Nobody wants to go first. And so when you do it first, people will follow.
100%. And Miha, and it doesn't have to always be, sometimes it could be cheesy being like, what's your dream? That's sometimes it's just like, what fires you up? What gets you out of bed in the morning? And I use an example of a guy that I had gone to a steak dinner, super connector in the business world in the US. And I'd never met him before. And literally for an hour and a half, he was completely kind of, downtrodden and participating in the conversation. There's 4 of us at that dinner. And then he started talking about these baby goats that he adopted, and he lit up. And I turned to him and I was like, time out. Do you understand? We've been sitting here talking about crazy, amazing business things. And the first time you've lit up is around baby goats. Dude, you need more baby goats in your life. And it doesn't matter what. He was like, you know what? I'm going to be honest with you. It is the most fulfilled I've been in 12 months. You're right, Chris. I was like, maybe you can be the baby goat whisperer. But ever since then, like when you actually help someone achieve, like see that within themselves, some of these dreams can be small. Some of these things can be not just, changing the world. And we need more of that. But also when you participate in terms of a reciprocity to help them achieve that or find that, then they're willing to kind of do anything for you, right? To a certain extent. And when it comes time for them moving their business for whatever expertise that you're providing, it's kind of like a no-brainer, right? And all of that, Miha, it takes effort. It takes time. And, once again, the idea behind the title of the book is it's also a call to action. We got to save our asks and instead focus in on developing genuine connection and relationships first. Then people will also ask me, be like, well, what happens when you're talking to someone and you don't really want to connect with them because you're not a good person? And my immediate response is you probably don't want them as clients because it's a short-term win that doesn't have a long tail to it. So yeah, that's my tirade there.
No, yeah, you can just go on and on and on. I can't stop listening to all of what you're saying. I mean, yes, I have to be mindful of your time and also I know that if we go too long, then most people won't watch the replay. So
sure.
I've like, Chris, you've shared so much of really like what the millennials say, value bombs. Really about employing millennials, being a leader, working with the millennials, saving your ask, like all of that, building relationships. But tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us a little bit about Chris. I know that our audience loves that.
Yeah, so I'm a partner in an advertising agency here in Atlanta, Georgia, called 22 Squared. My purpose is to inspire and connect. And so it's to inspire more people and to connect to more people one-on-one. And everything that I do kind of follows that filter. And, my currencies, if you will, are I've got some weird ones. Like all of my glasses are bright yellow and my car is bright yellow. My watch is bright yellow. And that's all about, I sign all my books. The best is yet to come because I think we need more light in this world. And I was kind of born as a optimist and someone that just tends to wake up excited to take on the world. And that's what I'm trying to provide it. I have 2 daughters who are 10 and 8 and an amazing wife I'm an identical twin and she's an identical twin. And I branded our wedding doublemintwedding.com. And that was kind of part of this whole viral video to my wife's dismay. She was a professional soccer player, played for the Atlanta Beat as well as in Europe and kind of in and out of the US national team. And she's in much better shape than I am. She beats my ass in any competition athletically, except for kiteboarding. Kiteboarding is another one of my kind of currencies and things that I get super excited about. Really anything dangerous with things attached to my feet, I tend to be pretty attracted to. And it's been one of that. I'm constantly trying to become a better human, and I think I can oftentimes be misinterpreted as something that I'm not. But my intentions and my metric of success, Miha, is to have an impact on this world. And I judge that on a daily basis when my head hits the pillow. And luckily, it's been a pretty successful year so far, even in quarantine.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. You are truly amazing, and I'm really big shout out to our blue-eyed friend Tommy Bridwell.
Yes. Oh, the best.
Well, my coworker, she always tells me like, "Oh, do you remember his blue eyes?" And I'm like, "Well, I mean, I would rather not. I mean, I would rather remember some blue eyes from a lovely lady. But yeah, I get the point. I get the point. So big shout out to him, and I'm really, really so grateful and so thankful that I know you. But
Yeah.
we are not done yet,
No.
so I'll go into that later on. You already mentioned what's the best way for people to get in touch with you, but let's do it again.
Yep.
Is this second book already available, or is it
No,
coming out?
I wrote the Millennial Whisperer in about 6 months, and I'm trying to take and this is because of our blue-eyed friend Tommy. He was like, Chris, take your time with this one, because this one you need to take your time with it. And what I'm finding is I'm having such an amazing time interviewing these people that I would guess it'll be available in just over a year. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, once again, the best way to get in touch with me is at Tuff22, TUFF 22 on Instagram. And then my website is themillennialwhisperer.com, 2 L's and 2 N's. And yeah, so that is, stay tuned on Savior Asks.
Okay, perfect. And make sure that you also do the Kindle and the Apple books and the audio version as well. Now, my last question before we sadly have to say goodbye, and that's always the same, and it's what's that last golden nugget of wisdom in all these crazy times? So bring us some light, give us some golden nugget of wisdom before we say goodbye.
Sure. So it's somewhere hidden in the Millennial Whisperer is this concept of turning any let's into a buy when. And I think that we can all attest to the fact that we live in a fairly unaccountable society, and we don't necessarily always walk the talk. And we can attest to it, whether it be an email, hey, let's do this or let's do that, and then there's no real follow through. And the same is true for networking. After you're at a Zoom networking event, you'll say to someone, hey, let's grab a virtual coffee or whatever. Let's do this, and then nothing happens. And so instead, I implore on everyone, I challenge everyone to meet that let's with and answer it with a buy when. And as you do that, Miha, I mean, that's what brought us here today. And you're saying, like you said, let's do a live Q&A on LinkedIn and YouTube. And by when? And then you get out your phones and you schedule that time. And what you'll find is that things start to happen and you start walking the talk more. But from a networking perspective, you become a lot more effective at actually going and having those meetings that otherwise would have never come to fruition.
I really like it. Walk your talk. I really do. I was just having this conversation today, and it was, how even more important it is to really do the due diligence and really do the dating when it comes to the online world. Because in the offline world, you live in a community, people know you. It's much harder to pretend and to hide and so on. But in the online world, we can all be whatever we want to be. And because of that, it's even more important. And there's a lot of talking, but very little of the doing or walking the talk. And so, yeah, that's really, really, really an important golden nugget of wisdom. Thank you for that, Chris.
Of course.
We still have something that we have to schedule, but that's a private conversation.
Yep.
So let's go from let's to by when on that one as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, Chris, thank you so much. I really appreciate you for who you are, what you do. I'm grateful that you were my guest today and that we had this lovely conversation, and that you took time away from your holiday to be here with me on LinkedIn, on YouTube, having this conversation. I wish you absolutely nothing but the best, and I can't wait to see the second book on the shelves. And yeah, just happy Monday, happy Labor Day, and enjoy the rest of the week.
Thank you, Miha. It's a privilege to be here. I appreciate you and everything that you're doing as well.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye. Oh boy. Don't you just love Chris? Don't you just love this guest that I'm having, Chris, Tommy, and so on? I really, really hope that you are enjoying these conversations as much as I am. Next Monday, another great interview. We have interviews booked until January, I think, right now. So every Monday we'll be back with new and new and new interviews. And I really appreciate everybody for watching this either live or watching this on a replay. Feel free to drop the comments, ask questions, reach out. It's really a pleasure to be here and sharing all of this with my network, with you guys. And I really hope you're enjoying these conversations. But yeah, Chris is just amazing. I absolutely love the guy. What he's telling about this new way of leadership, I think it's beyond just millennial whispering. I think the whole leadership is changing so much, and we are all becoming, in a way, millennials. We want to feel appreciated. We want to feel that we are connected, that we are following a leader that has a purpose and a passion and a vision and so on. So, yeah, definitely go check out his book. I will definitely start recommending that book to my clients. So I really, really suggest that you check it out. And like he mentioned, if you're from the US, you can get it for free. You just pay for the shipping and it's yours, which is an amazing deal. So yeah, without me going into too much rambling, thank you to everybody who was here with us. Next Monday, another interview. I appreciate everybody who is watching this live or on the replays. Take care. Have a lovely rest of the week. If you are in the US, happy Labor's Day. And if not, just happy Monday. Take care, guys.